Hello everyone, it is that time of the month again. Time to do my March reading wrap up, my April TBR. So I read a whopping 16 books in the month of March. That is the most books I've ever written in a single, or I've ever read in a single month. So I'm pretty excited and I feel very accomplished about that. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. First book I read in the month of March is Happy Place by Emily Henry. This was my first Emily Henry read, and a lot of people say like you should not judge your experience reading Emily Henry off of this book because this is her like lowest rated book. And I don't know, I rated it a 3 out of 5. There were a lot of parts that felt like it just was dragging on. Nothing exciting was happening. And the spice didn't really like happen till the middle. So I would say this book is just really mid to me. And I was kind of disappointed as to how mid it was. Next book I read was A Touch of Malice by Scarlett St. Clair. This is the third book in the Hades and Persephone series, and I finished it so that I could get A Touch of Chaos and be caught up before A Touch of Chaos. So this was probably my favorite of this entire series. I did end up giving this one a 5 out of 5 star. I was just really intrigued by the story, intrigued by what was happening, and I really loved this book out of all the ones in the series. Next is Hidden Bodies. This is the second book in the You series by Caroline Kepnes, and I rated this one a 5 star because it was just as intriguing as the first book. And I don't know, the books seem more psychological and the show seems more gruesome because he's definitely killed less people in the books so far. So, and the book 2 was very different than season 2. Next, continuing with rereading Twilight, I read Eclipse this month, and Eclipse is probably my favorite book in the series, and I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5. I love this book. It is my favorite Twilight book, and I think it will always be my favorite Twilight book. Then I read The Truth About Melody Brown by Lisa Jewell, and I have read like 2 other books by Lisa Jewell, and they were thrillers. This one is more like a lit fic mystery almost, but it follows a girl named Melody Brown, and she went through a lot of trauma as a child and can't really remember the trauma she went through until one day she goes on a date, and she goes to a hypnotist on this date and just all of a sudden can remember all of her childhood and her trauma. And I don't know, this read like a classic. I loved the audiobook of it. Like, I gave this a 5 out of 5. Next is The Playlist by Morgan Elizabeth. This book has so many bad reviews on Goodreads, but I actually thought it was super cute, very spicy. And I bought this book, as did a lot of Swifties, because of all the Swiftie references on the cover, and I was pleasantly surprised. The romance is cute. The female main character is a little annoying, but I got past that, and I love it because each of the chapters is named after a Taylor Swift song, so I love that. Next, Finding Cinderella. This is one of the Hopeless novellas, and I read this in like a day, and I rated it 3 out of 5. It's very instant lovey, but the end of the book was super good, and I was excited to continue on after this one. Then I have The Short Second Life of Bree Tanner, which is an Eclipse novella, and it's unnecessary, I think. I also hate the format. There's no like chapters or stopping points, so like logging your progress on Google or on Goodreads really sucks, especially when you're listening to the audiobook and you can't really keep track of like where you are exactly, because the audiobook just keeps going and going and going. So I gave this like, I think a 2 out of 5 or even a 1 out of 5. I have to look, but I don't know. If you're gonna reread Twilight, you don't necessarily need to read this. The only part that I enjoyed was that it was from a different point of view than just Bella's. It's like from a newborn vampire's point of view. Then I read one of my husband's favorite books ever, and that is The Voyage of the Frog by Gary Paulson. And I loved this book. It is such a beautiful story about grief and like living the person who died, like their grief, and just you want to fulfill like their last dying wishes. And I don't know, for a children's novel, this one is deep and I really liked it. So I gave that a 5 out of 5. Next, I read The Silent Patient, and I think this book is way too overhyped. I was bored for like a lot of this book, and I thought it was really predictable. So I gave it a 3 out of 5. I did enjoy some aspects of it. I did listen to it most of the time, and I don't know, just was not for me. Then I read Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. I'm slowly but surely making my way through the Grishaverse, and this book crushed my soul, and also is better than Six of Crows. I gave this one a 5 out of 5. I gave Six of Crows a 4 out of 5. But I'm actually meeting Leigh Bardugo on my birthday, April 12th. So I wanted to continue with the Grishaverse and continue reading all of the books. So this one definitely gave me emotional damage. And yeah. Then I read All Your Perfects, which is the second to last book in the Hopeless series. It is the last full-length book of the Hopeless series, and I absolutely loved this story. I will say there's a lot of talk about infertility in it and stuff like that, so if that triggers you, you might not want to read this book. But honestly, it was a beautiful story about like rekindling your love for each other in a marriage. And I don't know, I loved this book, 5 out of 5. Then to end the Hopeless series, I read Finding Perfect, which is only 83 pages long, and it is the perfect end of the series and wraps everything up, which is, I think, why this is the cover, because it just perfectly wraps everything up, ties all the characters together. I loved Finding Perfect. Then I read The Woman in Me by Britney Spears, and oh my god. Okay, like this would literally take me a day to read, but there were points of this book where I just had to stop reading for a second because there was just stuff that was super hard to like just read. And so I would like take a pause from reading this book and listen to my audiobook for the rest of the day, just because there's a lot of heavy topics in this book. And I gave this a 5 out of 5. Definitely one of my favorite memoirs I've ever read. And the last book. Actually, this is not the last book, because I read a book that was an ebook and it's only an ebook. So I'll talk about that one last. The last book I read was another Grishaverse book, and it is Shadow and Bone. And honestly, I did not like this book. I gave it a 2 out of 5. The ending was kind of good, but I don't know. I was very, very bored throughout most of this book. It's so much different. Like the writing style is so much different from like the Six of Crows duology too. So I wasn't used to that. I think the main character is really fun, and I like that she is telling the story, but I don't know. this one did not do it for me, and I gave it a 2 out of 5. And then the last book I read in March of 2024 was Evidence of the Affair by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It is a short story written in all like letters, and it is about this guy and this woman, and they find out that their spouses are cheating on each other with the other person's spouse. And then through that, like, you just find out all of these like secrets and stuff, and then they kind of rekindle their marriages. It's just a really good read, very fast paced. I finished it in like 2 hours, so I highly recommend, and I did give that a 5-star even though it is short. So now I'm going to go into the books that I want to read in April of 2024. Hey guys, it is a few days later from when I filmed the wrap-up portion of this video, because I had some serious things I had to take care of. My car died, and so we had a crazy rest of our day that day. But anyway, I am going to be doing my April TBR. So far, I have 10 books on my April TBR. That is the same amount I had on my March TBR, and I ended up reading 16 books. So we will see what I end up reading this month. Right now I'm reading 3 books at the same time. I started all 3 of these on April 1st. So I'm listening to one, exclusively listening to it. I'm reading I'm hard reading one, and then I'm hybrid reading one. So kind of a lot going on, but the one that I'm listening to is The Silent Wife, and I'm almost done, and I don't know how I feel about it yet. The next one, this is the one I'm physically reading, and it is Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. This is my first Lynn Painter book. I'm thoroughly enjoying it, and peep the bookmark, it even has Tortured Poets Department, which comes out in 2 weeks. So, and then I'm hybrid reading You Love Me, which means I'm listening to it and also physically reading it. And yeah, You Love Me, really good. Highly recommend. Love this series so far. It's the You series by Carolyn Kepnes. This is the 3rd book in that series. All right, continuing on with rereading Twilight. This month is Breaking Dawn month. I will be rereading Breaking Dawn, and I always have loved this book. This movie is my favorite one, part 1 specifically, but next month will be the last installment where I read Midnight Sun and maybe Life and Death if I feel like it, but yes. So, Breaking Dawn. Then I'm going to read Siege and Storm. All the Grishaverse people say that the Shadow and Bone series progressively gets better. I did not really like Shadow and Bone, as you saw earlier, but Siege and Storm, there's hope. And I think this cover is my favorite. I love the cover of this one. All right, then I'm finally going to read Sara Bareilles, Sounds Like Me. I've been a long time Sara Bareilles fan. I bought this literally when Waitress first premiered on Broadway, because that's when this book came out, and still have not read it. So it is finally going to get read in April. The next is a classic book that I've always wanted to read, The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I just think Sylvia Plath is a super interesting person. And so I am excited to dig into this book. Next is a middle grade book. It is Ban This Book by Alan Gratz. I'm excited to read this. It's going to be a lot different than a lot of his other books that he has. So I'm excited for that. Then I have a lit fic, which is When We Believed in Mermaids, and this book sounds really, really sad, so I'm a little scared to read it, but I've heard good things about it, and it is like a tale about like growing up together and being friends forever. There's some grief, some loss, things like that in here. And my last book that I intend on reading is actually a graphic novel, and it is called New Kid. And I am not usually like a graphic novel girly, but this is a graphic novel I've been anticipating forever. I heard about it from Elementary Intermittent Kim. She posted about that book when she was a 4th grade teacher, so I would like to read it and kind of get to know it. And I bought the whole trilogy, so I'm gonna check it out. That is my April TBR in a nutshell so far. If I have time, Touch of Chaos is definitely also on my list of things I want to maybe read this month. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. Stay beautiful. Bye.